Welcome back to Montana this morning. The time now is 6:45 on this Thursday. 60 degrees to get you out the door. A beautiful sunrise to get us all started. Sun peeking out right behind the clouds. Let's jump into news this morning. Fire crews on the Richard Spring fire getting some relief thanks to much needed rain overnight. And Highway 212 is open again after being closed most of the day Wednesday. But all evacuation orders remain in effect as flames still burn around Lame Deer. Residents in the area are staying in shelters in Busby and Crow agencies. Some were bused to a motel here in Billings. Broadus also has a shelter on standby, ready for anyone who needs a place to stay. The fire was fueled by high winds yesterday, but those are expected to die down this morning. Flames have jumped Highway 212, and fire officials warn it's approaching Lynch Coulee. They say if it gets across that, the Northern Cheyenne Health Clinic and Hospital are directly in the fire's path. Meanwhile, on top of fearing for their homes, people staying in Busby yesterday were forced to deal with power and internet outages and no cell service.
I don't know where anybody is. We haven't had no Wi-Fi, no electricity, no way to call, contact anybody, so I don't know. It's pretty scary.
I have like 20 grandchildren. That's all I got, and they're all here with me.
I hope they're all safe and pray. Everybody needs prayers.
I'm okay. I'm alive.
We're survivors. Cheyennes are survivors.
All of the evacuation shelters are looking for supplies. If you would like to help, Western Native Voice, a Native American advocacy group, will be collecting food, water, tents, and bedding in downtown Billings today. They'll be located at the corner of 3rd Avenue North and North 27th Street. Staff and volunteers with the organization made several drop-offs in Busby yesterday, but the need is still there. Family Service is also helping out. What originally started as a deal to get an admission discount to Montana Fair, the organization will take donated canned goods and deliver it to evacuees. 4 items gets $1 off the price of admission. In other news, across Montana, researchers have been testing wastewater to predict any potential spikes in COVID-19 cases. In Helena, there was a huge uptick of COVID found in wastewater tests, but experts say the data can be sporadic. Some weeks tests will show high levels, some weeks none, and it doesn't always reflect the actual COVID-19 case numbers. However, they say it's still important to test. For example, if a town has 0 reported cases and COVID-19 is discovered in the wastewater, it could be an early indicator the virus is picking back up. Researchers say there's another factor that's been skewing their numbers.
The other thing that we can't really expect or predict is the contribution of tourists. If tourism brings a lot of signal, then that's going to change from week to week as well.
Experts say the more people who get vaccinated, the less likely it will be COVID-19 shows up in wastewater. School is still out for the summer in Montana, but there are some COVID concerns when we do return based on other parts of the country. In Indiana, just days into the school year, students are being sent home due to coronavirus outbreaks. At least 4 Georgia school districts have stopped in-person classes. Some parents say there need to be safety measures in place when kids return. Yesterday, California became the first state to announce it will require all teachers to show proof of vaccination or take regular COVID-19 tests. Today, the Food and Drug Administration is expected to authorize a COVID-19 booster shot for people with compromised immune systems. Once the FDA approves the shot, it will be up to an expert panel at the CDC to make its recommendation. That panel is expected to meet tomorrow. Data presented by the CDC indicates a 3rd COVID shot could increase antibodies in immunocompromised people by up to 50%. But as reporter Ashar Qureshi learned, not all doctors are convinced a 3rd shot is necessary.
We know from data that over time the protection from the COVID vaccines weakens, but does it drop low enough to require a booster shot?
The original strains of the virus show that vaccine immunity starts to wane at maybe about 6 months or so, but that change is very small.
At 6 months, it drops from 95% to about 90%. With new variants like Delta, the efficacy, says Dr. Michael Angaroni, may drop down to 75 to 80% with the Pfizer vaccine. And a study from Israel puts the drop between 91% and 39%. All still prevent severe COVID illness.
But I think the more interesting factor is that we're not seeing those individuals who've had the vaccine getting the critical illness that we see in unvaccinated individuals.
Still, the Food and Drug Administration could roll out a plan in the next few weeks to authorize an additional dose of COVID vaccine, specifically for people who are immune compromised. But recent data from Johns Hopkins suggest it could be an exercise in diminishing returns.
Giving a third dose does increase the antibody response in some people, but there's still a large percent of transplant patients who aren't responding to the vaccine even after a third dose.
The National Institutes of Health just began a pilot study to assess the antibody response to a third dose mRNA vaccine in kidney transplant recipients who didn't respond to 2 doses of the Moderna or Pfizer vaccine.
And it may even be futile. You know, getting a third shot, getting a fourth shot for the people that are the most vulnerable, if there's still high amounts of circulating virus in their communities, they will still be at risk.
In the U.S., at least 50% of adults are fully vaccinated, with just over 70% having gotten 1 dose. Some health experts argue we should focus our efforts on vaccinating as many people as possible in the U.S. and around the world before we start giving booster doses of vaccine.
Less than 1% of all vaccine doses have gone to low-income countries. There are no walls in place. This is what's going to keep circulating.
Now it's time to start thinking about, well, what do we do for the rest of the world to start getting them to the 20%, 30%, 50% and more, so that we can really get everyone in the world access to these vaccines and get vaccinated.
Some experts say moving to boosters before increasing total vaccination numbers could prove ineffective in the long run, potentially extending the pandemic's potency.
The boosters will only protect you against the strains that the vaccine is made for. But as the virus circulates, you could have mutant strains that evolve, different variants that evolve that the vaccines won't protect against.
It's why reaching the unvaccinated, they say, won't just protect them, but everyone else as well. I'm Usher Qureshi reporting.
Also making headlines this morning, the Taliban is threatening to seize Afghanistan's capital. This comes as the last of the U.S. troops are planning to completely vacate the country in 3 weeks. The Taliban already controls roughly 2/3 of the nation's provinces. Despite the Taliban's gains, the White House says the military withdrawal will proceed as planned. The latest U.S. intelligence assessment shows the Taliban could completely roll over government forces within a few months. Today, the Census Bureau will release new information that is expected to show more diversity. Dozens of counties in 18 states no longer have a majority racial or ethnic group. Those states are mostly in the South and Southwest. Figures released in April showed U.S. population growth slowed to a rate not seen since the Great Depression. The report is 4 months late due to the pandemic. Many New Yorkers celebrated yesterday as Kathy Hochul addressed the state for the first time since Governor Andrew Cuomo announced his resignation. CBS's Bradley Blackburn tells us what New York's next governor had to say.
Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul is a new leader for New York, and she will be the first female governor in the state's history.
In 13 days, I will officially become the 57th governor of the state of New York.
The current governor, Andrew Cuomo, is resigning after being accused of sexually harassing 11 women. Hochul, in her first address since his announcement, promised a fresh start.
Regarding his decision to step down, I believe it is appropriate and in the best interest of the state of New York. And while it was not expected, it is a day for which I am prepared.
The 63-year-old Democrat has served quietly in politics for years as a county clerk, congresswoman, and since 2015, lieutenant governor. But Cuomo has stayed center stage, cultivating a national reputation. Hochul says he's kept her out of his inner circle.
I think it's very clear that the governor and I have not been close, physically or otherwise, in terms of much time.
She says she is working with him for a smooth transition, taking the reins in the middle of the pandemic. Hochul was not named in the AG report that found a toxic work environment that facilitated harassment.
No one who is named as doing anything unethical in the report will remain in my administration.
Hochul, who says she never planned on running for governor before this, tells CBS News she does plan to run for re-election next year. Bradley Blackburn, CBS News.
The White House says President Biden will meet with Lieutenant Governor Hochul in the coming days. And wrapping up our news this Thursday, the burning question on Jeopardy has been answered. Mike Richards, the show's executive producer, will take over permanent hosting duties for the popular game show. He was one of several guest hosts after longtime host Alex Trebek died of pancreatic cancer. Neuroscientist and actress Mayim Bialik will host primetime specials and spin-offs, including a new college championship tournament set for next year. Did you get to watch him host, Miller?
I watched it a little bit. He did a pretty good job, but I got to tell you, man, I sure do miss Alex Trebek.
Yeah.
Well, that's some tough shoes to fill there. He was so smooth, had a great personality, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, the guy filling in now, what's his name? Zach Gil Buck? Joe Buck. I guess he's a sports guy.
You should know that, as big as a sports aficionado you are. I mean, you got him on speed dial, don't you?
No, well,
Gil Buck?
I couldn't hear through my
Gil
earpiece.
Buck.
Well, I was like, he's pretty cool. He's really good. He kind of builds up the suspense. He's like, you got it, you know. Yeah. So
Yes,
I like
agree.
his style too.
All the guys here.
Everyone's
are very fond.
laughing at me.
Everybody's
now.
fond of Gil. We love Gil. He's fantastic.
If I knew his name, you would be very concerned about me.
I don't know. All right. Well, let's see if this Gil-approved forecast works for anybody out there. Roller coaster temperatures are on the way. Cooling down today. We're going to be back to seasonal tomorrow, and then as we get into the weekend, not only is it going to get hot, we're still talking about the possibility of record temperatures. Now, we're keeping an eye on the wildfires here. Down in Florida, though, they're keeping an eye on Gil. No, that's Tropical Depression Fred, actually. He's about 80 miles northeast of Guantanamo, Cuba. He has gotten weaker. His max sustained winds of 35 miles an hour. He's moving west-northwest at about 16. He's over land. He'll get back out into the ocean. He's anticipated to get stronger. As of right now, not looking like it's going to become a hurricane, but back to tropical storm status here over the next few days. You can see up the west coast of Florida. Definitely want to keep an eye on that. We could really use the rainfall here. We are seeing a little bit of rain out there this morning, but as the cold front passes, we're going to be dry all the way through the weekend. As we get into the first part of next week, though, fingers are crossed. Another cold front coming through that actually may give us a better chance of seeing more widespread rain. You can still see some of that light surface smoke out there. Should be light for most of us today. Down in Sheridan County, though, not too good in terms of your air quality again through this afternoon. 61 at the airport, humidity at 56%, winds out of the north at about 6 miles an hour. Temperatures across the viewing area. Here, by the way, you can see that slug of moisture as the cold front pushes through. We've had some rain down there along the Lame Deer Fire, so that's good news, but not much rain on the back end of that to help out. Temperatures 50s and 60s right now. We're looking pretty good across the state. We're in the 50s and 60s for the most part. There's that fire. Pretty much clear skies for us in terms of the surface smoke. You can see off to our west, though, it really is building up. That actually may thicken a little bit as we get into the afternoon here in Billings, but down there in Sheridan, you can see from the Rosebud wildfires, yeah, you do have some poor air quality that you're dealing with. Here is that frontal boundary, that cold front. Cooler air on the back end of that's going to dry us out. High pressure will dominate. We are going to get warmer tomorrow, back to seasonal temperatures. And then as we get into the weekend, the heat returns, and we're talking extreme heat by the time we get to Sunday. Just some records. Livingston, on Sunday, if you hit 96, you'll be shy of that record of 97 back in 2013. Cody, no records there, but you're going to be hot this weekend as well. Miles City, now we're not looking at any records really in Miles City. You may be thinking Sunday 101, is that close? Now you'd have to hit 105 to get that record. Sheridan, a high of 97 on Sunday, will be shy of the record of 100 back in 2003. That's also the record here in Billings on Sunday of 100. We actually have a better chance of possibly seeing that here in the Magic City. And then the cold front comes in and tries to cool us down next week with more rain possibly in the forecast.
Oh, well, now I'm reading more about Joe Buck, and I will always remember
Hi, Gil!
his name, but apparently people are giving him a hard time. James, King James, as we used to call him, the Jeopardy champ, tweeted, "Jeopardy says whoever hosts full-time will have to quit their job, so I'm crossing my fingers it's Joe Buck."
Come to look like, he does look like a Gil.
Anyways, have a great day. Me and Gil will see you back here tomorrow.